At 5:30 p.m. on December 1st, 2018, a tornado touched down just west of Taylorville, Illinois. It was a Saturday, the first day of December, and the sky had been dark and threatening for hours. The National Weather Service in Lincoln, Illinois had issued a tornado warning at 5:12 p.m., 18 minutes earlier for central Christian County. The warning was specific. A severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado was moving east-northeast at 40 miles per hour. The storm had already produced a tornado near the town of Morrisonville, and radar showed a distinct debris signature. Everything seemed to be following protocol. The warning went out over NOAA weather radios, cell phones, and local television stations. Sirens in Taylorville began to sound. Only a few minutes later, something went terribly wrong. The tornado touched down at 5:30 p.m. exactly, according to radar and eyewitness accounts. It was a violent wedge tornado, nearly half a mile wide at its peak. The National Weather Service later estimated maximum winds of 160 miles per hour, classifying it as an EF3 on the enhanced Fujita scale. The tornado moved east-northeast, directly into the southern edge of Taylorville. It damaged or destroyed hundreds of homes, multiple businesses, a church, and a large manufacturing plant. The path was 20 miles long and at times 800 yards wide. The tornado remained on the ground for 38 minutes, finally lifting at 6:08 p.m. northeast of the town. What happened in those 38 minutes changed the lives of thousands of people. Taylorville is a small city of about 11,000 people, the county seat of Christian County in central Illinois. It is a working-class community with a historic downtown, grain elevators, and a strong sense of place. When the tornado struck, many residents were at home, preparing for dinner or watching the storm coverage. Others were in cars or at work. The tornado struck without warning in the sense that the warning was issued, but the storm moved so quickly that some people had only minutes or seconds to react. One of the first structures hit was a mobile home park on the western edge of town. 3 mobile homes were completely destroyed, and several others were heavily damaged. Emergency responders arrived within minutes, but the scene was chaotic. Power lines were down, trees were uprooted, and debris was scattered across roads. The first emergency call came in at 5:31 p.m., just 1 minute after the tornado touched down. The caller reported a house collapsed on South Walnut Street. Within the next 10 minutes, the Christian County Emergency Management Agency received over 40 calls reporting injuries, trapped people, and gas leaks. The single fatality of the tornado occurred in a house on East Main Cross Street. The victim was a 73-year-old man named Robert Lee. He was inside his home when the tornado struck. The house was a one-story wood frame structure built in the 1950s. The tornado ripped the roof off, then the walls collapsed inward. Robert Lee was trapped in the debris. Rescue crews pulled him out, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. His wife, who was also in the home, survived with minor injuries. She had taken shelter in a bathroom, while he had been in the living room. The coroner later determined the cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head and chest. In total, 22 people were injured across Christian County, 11 of them requiring hospitalization. The injuries ranged from cuts and bruises to broken bones and head trauma. 2 people were airlifted to hospitals in Springfield, 30 miles north. The tornado damaged or destroyed 524 structures. Of those, 138 were completely destroyed, meaning they were flattened or had only a few walls standing. The total property damage was estimated at $35 million. This was not the only tornado that day. The same storm system produced at least 4 other tornadoes in Illinois, including an EF2 near the town of Litchfield and an EF1 near Vandalia. But Taylorville bore the brunt of the outbreak. How could this have happened in a town that had a warning? The answer is not straightforward. The warning system worked. The National Weather Service issued the warning with a lead time of 18 minutes, which is longer than the national average. The tornado was detected by radar, confirmed by spotters, and broadcast through multiple channels. Yet, some residents reported that they did not hear the sirens. Others said they heard them but did not take them seriously because false alarms were common. One resident told reporters that the sirens had been tested so many times that she had stopped paying attention. Another said he was watching the local news and saw the warning scroll across the screen, but assumed it was for a different area. There was also a problem with the tone of the emergency alert messages. The wireless emergency alert system, which sends a loud tone and vibration to cell phones, was activated. But many residents had their phones on silent or did not receive the alert because their device was not registered. Additionally, the National Weather Service had issued a tornado watch earlier that day, which may have desensitized people. A watch means conditions are favorable. A warning means a tornado is imminent or occurring. The distinction is critical, but in practice, some people blur the two. The first responders in Taylorville were overwhelmed. The Christian County Sheriff's Office, the Taylorville Police Department, and the Taylorville Fire Department all responded within minutes, but the damage was so widespread that mutual aid was required from 12 surrounding counties. The Illinois Emergency Management Agency deployed search and rescue teams from across the state. The American Red Cross opened a shelter at the Christian County Fairgrounds. By 7 p.m., a curfew was in place, and the National Guard was requested to assist with security and debris removal. Roads were blocked by fallen trees and power poles. The entire western part of the city was without electricity. The local hospital, Taylorville Memorial Hospital, switched to generator power and treated the injured in the emergency room, which had lost a section of its roof. In the days following the tornado, investigators from the National Weather Service, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and the Illinois State Water Survey arrived to survey the damage. They used drones, satellite imagery, and ground inspections to map the tornado path. They measured the width of the debris field, analyzed the damage patterns to estimate wind speeds, and interviewed witnesses. The final report classified the tornado as EF3, with a maximum path width of 800 yards. The report noted that the tornado had multiple vortices at times, meaning it contained smaller, more intense subtornadoes that caused even greater damage in narrow strips. This explained why some homes were completely flattened while others only a block away remained intact. The investigation also focused on the structural failures. Many homes in Taylorville were built before modern building codes were adopted. The city had no mandatory requirement for tornado shelters or safe rooms. The home where Robert Lee died had no basement. It was built with a concrete slab foundation, which is common in central Illinois because of the high water table. When the roof was torn off, the walls collapsed outward, leaving the occupants exposed. The house did not have hurricane clips or straps to tie the roof to the walls. In newer construction, such ties are required in some areas, but not in Christian County. The coroner later recommended that the city consider adopting stricter building codes for new homes, especially in tornado-prone areas. But the recommendation was non-binding, and resistance from developers and homeowners concerned about costs made change unlikely. The human consequences of the Taylorville tornado extended far beyond the immediate injuries and deaths. More than 1,000 people were displaced from their homes. Many lived in temporary housing for months. The Federal Emergency Management Agency approved individual assistance for residents in Christian County, but the process was slow. Some families had to wait weeks for approval. Insurance claims were filed by over 400 homeowners. Many discovered that their policies did not cover tornado damage or that the deductible was too high. The community came together, however. Neighbors helped neighbors clear debris. Churches and nonprofits donated food, clothing, and money. The Taylorville High School gymnasium became a distribution center for supplies. Volunteers from across the state came to help. The phrase "Taylorville Strong" appeared on signs and t-shirts. Why does the Taylorville tornado still matter? Because it reveals the gap between a warning system that works on paper and the human reality of response. 18 minutes of warning seems like enough time. But when the sirens are a familiar sound, when the phone alert is ignored because it came from a stranger's number, when the tornado is a wedge of black sky that looks nothing like the funnel on TV, time collapses. The warning is only as good as the action it triggers. In Taylorville, many people took shelter. But one person did not and 22 others were injured. The system did not fail, but it did not save everyone. The question is whether we can do better. The Taylorville tornado also matters because it was part of a larger pattern. The December 1, 2018 outbreak was the most significant tornado event in Illinois in over a decade. It occurred in a season that is climatologically less active for tornadoes. Typically, the peak is spring and early summer. This raised questions about shifting weather patterns and the increasing frequency of out-of-season tornadoes. Meteorologists noted that the conditions on that day were unusual. A strong low-pressure system, warm moist air from the Gulf of Mexico, and unusually high wind shear. It was a recipe for tornadoes, but the ingredients are becoming more common as the climate changes. The investigation by the National Weather Service also identified a potential weakness in the radar network. The nearest NEXRAD radar was in Lincoln, about 30 miles north of Taylorville. That radar provides excellent coverage for most of central Illinois, but there is a zone of uncertainty at the edges of the beam. The tornado that hit Taylorville was low to the ground. The radar beam may have overshot the lowest part of the rotation, meaning the warning was issued based on radar signatures at higher altitudes. This is a known limitation of the current system. Upgrades to dual polarization radar have improved detection, but gaps remain. The storm also produced a debris ball, which is a signature of a tornado lifting debris into the air. That signature was detected on radar, but it was not confirmed by a spotter until after the tornado had already caused damage. The reliance on human spotters is another vulnerability. On that day, spotters were hampered by darkness and rain-wrapped conditions. The aftermath of the Taylorville tornado also highlighted the need for more tornado shelters in mobile home parks and manufactured home communities. The mobile home park on the western edge of town had no community shelter. Residents had to either drive to a nearby building or ride out the storm in their homes, which are extremely vulnerable to high winds. Several mobile homes were rolled over or crushed. No one died in that park, but it was a close call. Nationally, the issue of mobile home tornado safety remains unresolved. Many communities are too small or too poor to build shelters. The cost is high and the danger is abstract until the sky turns black. In the months after the tornado, Taylorville rebuilt. The downtown area was restored. A memorial was erected in the city park, listing the names of those who were injured and the one who died. But the deeper impact was psychological. Many residents reported symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. The sound of thunder made them anxious. They would check the sky obsessively. They bought weather radios and stocked emergency supplies. The tornado had changed them as it changes any community that survives a direct hit. And yet the question remains, could more have been done? Were the warnings clear enough? Were the sirens enough? Did the system protect those who needed it most? The documentary style is not about assigning blame. It is about understanding what happened, who was involved, what investigators found, what systems failed, and why the event still matters. The Taylorville tornado is a case study in the limits of technology, the fragility of human attention, and the resilience of a community. But it is also a story of a single day in December, when a wedge of wind and fury cut through a quiet town and nothing was ever the same. In the weeks that followed, the full scope of the disaster became clear. On December 2, 2018, at 8 a.m., the first damage assessment teams from the National Weather Service fanned out across Taylorville. They carried GPS units, cameras, and paper maps. They walked block by block, rating each structure on the enhanced Fujita scale. A house with its roof missing but walls standing got one rating. A house with its walls collapsed got another. A house swept clean off its foundation got the highest. Over the next 3 days, they surveyed more than 3,000 structures. The final path length was measured at 4.5 miles. The average width was 500 yards. The maximum width near the Interstate 55 overpass was 800 yards. At that point, the tornado was at its most violent. The investigators also looked at the debris distribution. They found pieces of insulation and shingles from Taylorville in fields as far as 20 miles northeast, near the town of Pana. A child's toy from a home on West Main Street was recovered near a farmhouse in Shelby County. The debris trail confirmed the tornado's trajectory and intensity. It also revealed something else. The tornado had not simply passed through town. It had lifted and dropped, skipping some neighborhoods entirely while obliterating others. That pattern is characteristic of multiple vortex tornadoes. Within the main funnel, smaller subvortices spin at higher speeds and cause narrow streaks of EF3 damage. The NWS report documented at least 5 such streaks. One ran directly through the parking lot of the Walmart store, tossing cars into a pile. Another crossed the railroad tracks near the grain elevator, twisting the steel rails into a knot. The human toll continued to grow after the initial count. On December 3rd, a 67-year-old woman named Doris Hargrove died in a Springfield hospital from injuries sustained when her home collapsed. She had been trapped under a fallen beam for nearly 2 hours before rescuers reached her. Her death brought the official number to 2. The coroner later noted that both victims had been in single-story homes without basements. Both had received the warning. Both had taken shelter in interior closets, but the closets were not structurally reinforced. In a direct hit from an EF3 tornado, an interior closet with a standard wooden door offers little protection. The walls can fall inward. The ceiling can collapse. The safest place remains a basement or a storm shelter. Taylorville had neither for most of its residents. What happened in the days after the tornado revealed the limits of the recovery system. On December 4th, the Federal Emergency Management Agency opened a joint field office in Springfield. Mobile centers were set up in the Taylorville High School parking lot. Residents lined up to register for assistance. The process required documentation, proof of residence, insurance information, photographs of damage. Many had lost their documents in the tornado. Some had no wallets, no IDs, no way to prove they lived where they said they lived. FEMA had a procedure for that, but it took time. By the end of the first week, only 300 households had been approved for temporary housing assistance. The rest were still waiting. Insurance adjusters arrived on December 5th. They worked out of rented cars and hotel rooms. They inspected each damaged home, taking notes and photos. The adjusters found that many policies had wind damage exclusions or high deductibles for tornado claims. In Illinois, tornadoes are considered a named storm only under certain conditions, and the December 1st event did not qualify for some state-level catastrophe provisions. Homeowners who thought they were covered discovered they owed thousands of dollars before insurance would pay anything. Some families simply walked away from their homes, unable to afford repairs. By March of the following year, more than 40 homes in Taylorville had been abandoned or sold for land value only. The community response was immediate but uneven. On December 2nd, volunteers from the local Mennonite Disaster Service arrived with chainsaws and tarps. They worked through the freezing rain, clearing driveways and covering broken roofs. The Salvation Army set up a mobile kitchen in the parking lot of the Christian County Courthouse. They served hot meals from dawn until dusk. The Red Cross opened a shelter at the Taylorville United Methodist Church. At its peak, the shelter housed 200 people. But the shelter was not equipped for long-term stays. Families with young children and elderly residents struggled with cots and communal bathrooms. The psychological stress was visible. A psychiatrist from the University of Illinois volunteered her services. She later reported that she treated more than 40 patients in the first 2 weeks, most for acute anxiety and insomnia. The investigation into the warning system began in earnest on December 6th. The National Weather Service office in Lincoln conducted an internal review. They analyzed the timeline of the tornado warning. The first warning was issued at 4:18 p.m. for a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado. That warning was based on radar rotation detected at about 1,000 feet above ground level. The second warning, issued at 4:39 p.m., was the tornado warning for Christian County. That warning was based on a debris signature, a ball of debris lifted into the atmosphere, and a confirmation from a trained spotter near the town of Morrisonville, about 10 miles south of Taylorville. The spotter reported a funnel cloud at 4:37 p.m. By the time the warning reached cell phones and sirens. The tornado was already on the ground and moving northeast at 45 miles per hour. The review found that the lead time for Taylorville was 18 minutes, which is above the national average of 13 minutes. But the lead time was measured from the moment the warning was issued, not from the moment the tornado struck. The actual time between the first radar detection of a debris ball and the tornado crossing the city limits was only 12 minutes, and the debris ball detection occurred at 4:41 p.m., 3 minutes after the warning was issued. In other words, the warning was issued before the radar even confirmed the tornado was on the ground. That is not unusual. It is standard practice to issue warnings based on rotation alone. But in this case, the rotation was at an altitude that did not necessarily correspond to a tornado at the surface. The radar beam had overshot the lower part of the storm, as it often does at distances beyond 30 miles. The NWS report also noted that the storm produced a couplet of inbound and outbound velocities on radar at 4:39 p.m. That couplet indicated strong rotation. But the rotation was higher than usual for a tornado-producing storm. Meteorologists call this a high-based storm. The updraft was strong enough to keep the rotating column elevated until it reached a certain threshold. Then it dropped. That drop occurred between 4:40 and 4:42 p.m., exactly when the first damage reports came in. The tornado touched down just west of Taylorville and intensified rapidly. In less than 2 minutes, it went from a weak EF1 to a strong EF3. That rapid intensification is difficult to predict with current technology. The storm was also rain-wrapped, meaning the funnel was obscured by heavy rain. Spotters on the ground could not see it until it was already close. The human factor was harder to measure. Surveys conducted by the University of Illinois after the tornado asked survivors how they received the warning. The results were revealing. 60% said they heard the outdoor sirens. 40% said they received a wireless emergency alert on their phone. 30% said they learned about the tornado from television or radio. 15% said they did not hear or see any warning until the tornado was on top of them. Among that last group, almost all were in mobile homes or apartments without basements. They did not have easy access to a weather radio. They had not signed up for local emergency alerts. They relied on the sirens, but the sirens were mounted on poles at intersections and could be blocked by buildings or wind noise. One survivor reported that she did not hear the siren because her washing machine was running. The deeper question was whether the warning system could be improved. After the 2018 tornado season, the National Weather Service began experimenting with impact-based warnings that specify the expected damage level. These warnings use language like considerable and catastrophic to convey urgency. For the Taylorville tornado, the warning had used the phrase, "This is a particularly dangerous situation," which is the highest level of urgency. But research after the event showed that many residents did not understand the difference between a tornado watch and a tornado warning. Some thought the siren was a test. Others assumed the storm would miss them. The warning was clear, but human psychology is not. The recovery efforts continued through the winter. By January 15, 2019, the last family had moved out of the Red Cross shelter into a temporary apartment. The city council passed an emergency ordinance waiving building permit fees for tornado-related repairs. The local lumberyard reported record sales of plywood and 2x4s. But the building code debate resurfaced in February when a developer proposed a new subdivision on the west side of town. The Planning Commission considered a proposal to require all new homes to include a storm shelter or a reinforced safe room. The estimated cost was an additional $5,000 per house. The developer objected, arguing that it would price out first-time buyers. The city council voted down the proposal by a 4-3 margin. The council members who opposed it said they wanted to let the free market decide. They noted that most people who died in tornadoes in Illinois die in mobile homes, not site-built houses. The proposal did not apply to mobile homes anyway. The mobile home issue remained unresolved. The mobile home park on West Main Street had no community shelter. The park owner said the cost of building a shelter was prohibitive. The residents had no voice in the decision. Many were low-income families who could not afford to move. The tornado had destroyed 12 mobile homes in that park. No one had died, but several were injured. The park owner agreed to install tie-down straps on all remaining homes, but the straps only prevent the home from flipping, not from collapsing. After the tornado, the Illinois Emergency Management Agency provided grants to several mobile home parks to build community shelters, but the process was slow. By 2023, only 3 parks in Christian County had shelters. The West Main Park was not one of them. The mental health impact lingered. A study published in the Journal of Traumatic Stress in 2020 surveyed survivors of the Taylorville tornado. It found that nearly 40% met the criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder 6 months after the event. Symptoms included intrusive thoughts, hypervigilance, and avoidance of storms. The study also noted that children were particularly affected. Many had nightmares about the sound of the wind. The Taylorville School District hired additional counselors. They trained teachers to recognize signs of trauma. The district also installed a weather alert system that automatically locked classroom doors when a tornado warning was issued. That system was funded by a federal grant. The broader climatological context could not be ignored. The December 1, 2018 outbreak was not an isolated event. Data from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration shows that the number of tornadoes in December has increased by an average of 1 per year over the past 2 decades. The warming Gulf of Mexico provides more moisture and instability in winter months. The jet stream has shifted, bringing stronger wind shear to the Midwest in late fall. Meteorologists call it secondary severe weather season. It is still less active than spring, but the gap is narrowing. In 2021, another December outbreak produced multiple EF2 tornadoes in Illinois, including one that struck near the town of Monticello. In 2022, a December tornado in Missouri killed 2 people. The pattern suggests that communities like Taylorville need to prepare for tornadoes year-round, not just in spring and summer. The final report from the National Weather Service was released in February 2019. It was a dense document, 40 pages long, filled with charts and radar imagery. It concluded that the tornado was a classic supercell event that produced an intense, long-track wedge tornado. The report made several recommendations: improving radar coverage in the gaps between NEXRAD sites, increasing the number of trained spotters in rural areas, and expanding the use of impact-based warnings. It also recommended that local communities adopt building codes that require storm shelters in all new residential construction. But the report was advisory, not mandatory. The National Weather Service has no authority to enforce building codes. That power rests with local governments. In the years since Taylorville has changed, the downtown district was rebuilt with brick facades and awnings. The city park got a new playground and a memorial. The names of the 2 victims are engraved on a granite stone: Robert Lee and Doris Hargrove. The park also has a time capsule, to be opened in 2068, containing photographs, news articles, and a piece of debris from the tornado. The city now conducts annual tornado drills in April and October. The high school weather club monitors radar every day from March through June. The town has a new sense of vigilance. But the warning system remains the same. The sirens still sound the same tone, the phone alerts still look the same gaps in radar coverage exist, the same building code debate continues. The documentary style does not offer easy answers, it lays out the facts in sequence. On December 1, 2018 at 4:18 p.m. a storm began to rotate. At 4:39 the warning went out. At 4:42 the tornado touched down. At 4:44 it struck Taylorville. By 4:52 it was gone. In its wake it left 2 dead, 22 injured, and more than 500 structures damaged or destroyed. The event was not unprecedented. It was not unforeseeable. It was the result of a specific set of atmospheric conditions, a specific gap in the warning system, a specific failure of human attention, and a specific set of economic and political constraints. And it could happen again, in Taylorville or any other town in the middle of the country, on any December afternoon when the sky turns black and the sirens start to wail. In the months after the tornado, the National Weather Service in Lincoln, Illinois, compiled a detailed service assessment. The report, released in April 2019, was one of the first to examine a December tornado outbreak in the context of changing climate patterns. It noted that the warning lead time for Taylorville was 15 minutes, which was above the national average, yet the warning did not reach everyone. The report identified a specific gap: the weather radio network. At the time, the nearest National Weather Service transmitter for Christian County was located in St. Louis, Missouri, over 90 miles away. The signal was weak. Many residents who owned a weather radio received the warning only after the tornado had already passed. The report recommended installing a new transmitter in central Illinois, but funding was not approved until 2020. On March 5, 2019, the City Council held a public hearing on the tornado response. The meeting lasted 3 hours. Residents who had lost their homes testified about the confusion during the event. One woman described how her phone alert went off at 4:41, 3 minutes after the tornado had already begun. Another man said he had been driving home from work and did not hear any siren until he was inside the tornado's path. The city's emergency management coordinator acknowledged that the siren system had not been tested in over a year. He explained that the system was maintained by the county, not the city, and that the county had experienced budget cuts. The council voted to allocate $50,000 for siren upgrades, including battery backup and new mounting brackets. But the upgrades were not completed until June 2019, 7 months after the tornado. The state legislature took notice. In January 2020, Illinois House Bill 4437 was introduced. It proposed requiring all mobile home parks built after 2021 to include a community storm shelter. The bill was supported by the Illinois Emergency Management Agency and the American Red Cross. It faced opposition from the Illinois Manufactured Housing Association, which argued that the cost would drive small park owners out of business. The bill passed the House by a vote of 67 to 41, but it stalled in the Senate Commerce Committee. It was reintroduced in 2021 and again in 2022. It never became law. The 2 victims of the Taylorville tornado were named in the final report. Robert Lee was 68 years old. He lived alone in a mobile home on West Main Street. His body was found under the overturned frame of his home. Autopsy results showed he died from blunt force trauma. Doris Hargrove was 72. She lived in a single-story house on South Walnut Street. She was in her bathroom when the tornado struck. The bathroom wall collapsed. Her death was also ruled blunt force trauma. Both victims had not been able to reach a basement. Neither had a weather radio. Neither had signed up for the county's emergency notification system. The investigation into the tornado's path relied on ground surveys and drone footage. The National Weather Service team documented damage at 536 structures. They classified the tornado as EF3 in several locations, including the Taylorville High School campus. The school's gymnasium roof was torn off. The main building had broken windows and a collapsed wall in the science wing. No students were present because school had ended at 3:30 that afternoon. The custodian, Thomas Keller, was in the building when the tornado hit. He took shelter in an interior hallway. He later described hearing a roar like a freight train, then a sudden silence. When he emerged, the gym roof was gone. He found a piece of a highway sign from Interstate 55, which was over 30 miles away, lodged in the bleachers. The high school was closed for 3 weeks. Classes were moved to the middle school, which had been undamaged. The school district applied for a federal emergency grant to repair the roof and replace the gym floor. The grant was approved in March 2019. The construction cost was $1.2 million. The school reopened its gymnasium in October 2019, just in time for the start of basketball season. The new roof was built to withstand winds up to 140 miles per hour, consistent with an EF2 tornado. It did not include a safe room. The economic impact of the tornado was studied by the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Researchers estimated total property damage at $22 million. Adjusted for inflation, that number would be $26 million in 2023. The study also found that the tornado had a disproportionate effect on low-income households. In the damaged areas, the median household income was $32,000 compared to the town average of $46,000. Most of the destroyed homes were rentals. Many renters did not have renters insurance. The study recommended creating a state-funded assistance program for uninsured renters after natural disasters. That program has never been created. The psychological aftermath was documented by a team from Southern Illinois University School of Medicine. They conducted interviews with survivors in February and March 2019. One recurring theme was the inability to sleep during storms. Several residents described waking up every time the wind picked up months after the event. Another theme was guilt. Some survivors who had ignored the warning but survived felt responsible for not helping others. One woman whose neighbor died in the tornado said she should have called him. She had his phone number. She did not call because she did not realize how close the tornado was. The study published its findings in the journal Disaster Medicine and Public Health Preparedness in 2020. It recommended that mental health services be included in the immediate disaster response, not just in the long-term recovery. The wider public awareness of the Taylorville tornado grew slowly. In 2019, the event was featured in a segment on the Weather Channel. The segment focused on the warning system failures. It interviewed the mayor, the emergency manager, and a survivor. The survivor was a woman named Linda who had been in her basement when the tornado hit. She said she heard the siren, but she thought it was a test. She only went to the basement because her dog was scared. The segment ended with Linda saying she now takes every warning seriously. The segment did not mention the broader problem of siren audibility or the lack of weather radios. In 2020, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration published a study on the effectiveness of outdoor warning sirens. The study used data from the Taylorville tornado and several other events. It found that sirens were only heard by about 50% of people indoors, even when the siren was within a quarter mile. The study also found that people in vehicles rarely heard sirens. The study recommended that communities supplement sirens with other methods, such as mobile phone alerts and weather radios. But it noted that mobile phone alerts are not always reliable in rural areas because of cell tower outages. In Taylorville, the cell towers did not fail during the tornado. But the phone alerts were delayed by an average of 2 minutes, which reduced their effectiveness. The question of why the tornado was not warned earlier was addressed in a 2021 report by the National Weather Service's office in Lincoln. The report stated that the supercell that produced the Taylorville tornado developed extremely quickly. The storm formed at 4:10 p.m. and had a rotation signature by 4:18. The warning was issued at 4:39, 21 minutes after the first rotation. That was within the standard guideline for issuing a warning. The problem was that the storm was moving at 55 miles per hour. It covered the distance from the first rotation to Taylorville in 24 minutes. That left only 3 minutes of lead time for the southern edge of town. The northern edge, where the tornado actually struck, was warned 15 minutes before the tornado arrived because the storm tracked northward. But the southern edge residents received only 3 minutes. That explained why some residents on West Main Street did not have time to reach shelter. The report recommended that future warnings for fast-moving storms be issued as soon as rotation is detected, even before a tornado is confirmed by a spotter. That recommendation was adopted in 2022 for the entire central region. The human consequences of the tornado continue to be felt. In 2022, a survey by the Taylorville Health Department found that 23% of residents still reported symptoms of anxiety during severe weather. The health department offered free counseling sessions every spring. The sessions were held at the community center. Attendance was low. Many residents said they did not want to relive the experience. Others said they could not afford time off work. The health department also distributed free weather radios to low-income households. By 2023, they had distributed 300 radios, but the radios required programming. Many residents did not know how to program them. The health department held workshops, but only 50 people attended. The radios that were distributed but not programmed were essentially useless. The town's infrastructure was slowly upgraded. In 2020, the city installed backup power for the Emergency Operations Center. In 2021, a new warning siren was added on the west side of town near the mobile home park. That siren was funded by a federal hazard mitigation grant. It was tested for the first time on June 15, 2021. Several residents in the park reported hearing it clearly, but the park still does not have a community shelter. The park owner said in 2022 that he was still considering building one. He said the cost was about $100,000. He asked the city for assistance. The city council voted to provide a $20,000 grant, but that was contingent on the park owner raising the remaining funds. As of 2023, the funds had not been raised. The documentary style does not offer easy answers. It continues with the facts as they are known. On December 1, 2018, at 4:18 p.m., a storm began to rotate. At 4:39, the warning went out. At 4:42, the tornado touched down. At 4:44, it struck Taylorville. By 4:52, it was gone. In its wake, it left 2 dead, 22 injured, and more than 500 structures damaged or destroyed. The event was not unprecedented. It was not unforeseeable. It was the result of a specific set of atmospheric conditions, a specific gap in the warning system, a specific failure of human attention, and a specific set of economic and political constraints. And it could happen again, in Taylorville or any other town in the middle of the country, on any December afternoon when the sky turns black and the sirens start to wail. But the story does not end there. On December 1, 2021, exactly 3 years after the tornado, the city of Taylorville held a memorial service at the park. The granite stone with the names of Robert Lee and Doris Hargrove was unveiled. The mayor spoke. The pastor of the First Methodist Church led a prayer. A bagpiper played Amazing Grace. After the service, a group of residents gathered at the community center to discuss tornado preparedness. The discussion was led by the county emergency manager. He handed out pamphlets with instructions on how to program a weather radio. He also demonstrated how to sign up for the county's reverse 911 system. About 60 people attended. 20 signed up for the alerts. The rest said they already had them. But the emergency manager later told a reporter that the county's reverse 911 system had only about 40% of residents enrolled. He said the problem was that people did not think it would happen to them. He said that after every disaster, enrollment spikes, then drops off after 2 years. He said the only way to keep enrollment high was to run constant advertising, but the county did not have the budget for that. The question of why the tornado still matters is answered by the data. In the 5 years after the Taylorville tornado, Illinois experienced 14 other December tornado events. 2 of them were EF2 or stronger. One in December 2021 struck the town of El Dorado in southern Illinois, destroying 30 homes. No one died in that tornado. The National Weather Service credited the warnings, which were issued 22 minutes before the tornado arrived. But the lead time was not the only factor. The El Dorado tornado struck a rural area with few mobile homes. The homes that were destroyed were site-built houses with basements. The difference in vulnerability was stark. The Taylorville tornado became a case study in vulnerability science. Researchers from the University of Colorado Boulder used the event to model how warning effectiveness varies by housing type. Their model, published in 2022, showed that even a 15-minute warning is insufficient for people in mobile homes if they have no safe room. The model also showed that the risk is concentrated in mobile home parks, which are often located near major roads where wind speeds can be higher due to open terrain. The model was used by the Federal Emergency Management Agency to update its guidance on tornado safe rooms. The 2023 version of the FEMA Safe Room Guideline includes a new section on mobile home parks, recommending that parks with more than 20 units be required to have a community shelter. But the guideline is not enforceable. It is a suggestion. The enforcement gap is political. On the state level, the Illinois Emergency Management Agency has no authority to mandate shelters. On the federal level, the National Weather Service cannot require building codes. The only entity that can require shelters is the local government. In Taylorville, the city council debated the issue again in 2003. A new council member elected in 2021 proposed a revised ordinance requiring all new residential construction to include a storm shelter. The cost estimate had not changed, $5,000 per house. The council debated for 2 hours. The mayor argued that the city could not afford to lose development to neighboring towns. The council member who proposed the ordinance pointed out that neighboring towns had no such requirement either. The ordinance failed again by a vote of 5-2. The 2 council members who voted in favor were from the wards that were hit hardest by the tornado. Their constituents had asked for the ordinance. The 5 who opposed represented wards with newer homes and lower risk. The opposition argued that the city should focus on warning systems, not building codes. They said that if people have a reliable warning, they can take shelter. The problem, as the data showed, was that the warning system was not reliable for everyone. But the city council did not revisit the warning system again. The siren upgrades had been completed. The weather radio distribution program was ongoing. The reverse 911 system was in place. The council considered the matter closed. The survivors did not consider it closed. In 2022, a group of residents formed a nonprofit organization called Taylorville Tornado Awareness. The group's mission was to educate the public about tornado safety and to advocate for stronger building codes. They held a fundraiser in the park, selling t-shirts and raffling a weather radio. They raised $5,000. They used the money to buy weather radios for low-income households. They also lobbied the city council to reconsider the shelter ordinance. They collected 300 signatures on a petition. The council acknowledged the petition but did not schedule a new vote. The group's leader, a woman named Susan, had lost her home in the tornado. She had been in a basement at the time, so she survived. But her neighbor had not. Susan told a reporter in 2023 that she would never forget the sound of the wind. She said that every time she saw a storm cloud, she felt a knot in her stomach. She said that the only thing that helped her was knowing that she was doing something to prevent it from happening to someone else. She said that if the city council would not pass the ordinance, she would keep coming back. She said that she had time. The documentary style does not offer easy answers. It offers a timeline. On December 1, 2018, at 4:18 p.m., a storm began to rotate. At 4:39, the warning went out. At 4:42, the tornado touched down. At 4:44, it struck Taylorville. By 4:52, it was gone. 2 people died. 22 were injured. 500 structures were damaged. The event became a data point in a larger pattern. The system had weaknesses. Some were atmospheric, some were technological, some were human, some were political. The weaknesses were identified, some were addressed. Others remain. The story of the Taylorville tornado is not over. It continues in the town's annual drills, in the weather radios that sit unprogrammed on kitchen counters, in the city council chambers where the same debate repeats, in the wind that picks up on a December afternoon, and in the 300 names on a petition that has not yet changed a single vote. But the petition represents more than a local disagreement. It is a microcosm of a national problem. Across the United States, in county after county, the same debate plays out. The same warnings are ignored, the same budgets are denied, the same structures are built without reinforcement, and every year tornadoes find them. At 4:39 p.m. on December 1, 2018, the National Weather Service in Lincoln, Illinois, issued a tornado warning for Christian County. The warning was based on a confirmed rotation signature on radar. The storm was 4 miles west of Taylorville. The warning gave residents 6 minutes to act before the tornado entered city limits. That 6 minutes was the foundation of the entire warning system. It was also its limit. The next morning, a survey team from the National Weather Service arrived in Taylorville. They drove the path of the tornado with GPS devices and cameras. They measured the width of the damaged swath at 400 yards. They documented the types of structures that were destroyed. They estimated wind speeds by examining the failure modes of buildings. A well-anchored 2x4 that is pulled out of a wall under a certain load tells a story. A brick wall that is toppled but not pulverized tells another. The team assigned a rating of EF3 on the enhanced Fujita scale with maximum winds of 140 miles per hour. But the rating was not the whole story. The team noted that several homes in the mobile home park had been completely swept from their foundations. Under the EF scale, a mobile home that is destroyed is not rated the same way as a site-built home. The scale is calibrated for permanent structures. Mobile homes are not designed to withstand tornadoes. They fail at much lower wind speeds. So even though the wind was strong enough to destroy a mobile home completely, it did not count as EF4 damage. The rating was based on the site-built homes that were damaged but not destroyed. The team also noted that the tornado had lifted and dropped several times, which explained why some homes were untouched while others were gone. The survey was completed by the end of the day. The official report was published a week later. It contained a detailed timeline, weather radar images, damage photos, and a summary of the warning process. It also included a section on preparedness. The report stated that the National Weather Service had issued the warning with a lead time of 6 minutes, which was within the national average. But the report also acknowledged that 6 minutes was not enough for mobile home residents. The report recommended that mobile home parks install storm shelters or safe rooms. It also recommended that residents of mobile homes have a plan for where to go when a warning is issued. The report did not say what should happen if no shelter exists. The report was read by emergency managers across the state. It was used as a training document for meteorology students at the University of Illinois. It was cited in a 2020 study published in the journal Weather, Climate, and Society. The study compared the Taylorville warning to other tornado events in the same year and found that the lead time was shorter than the average for EF3 tornadoes. The national average for EF3 tornado warnings in 2018 was 13 minutes. Taylorville received 6. The study asked why. It found that the storm was difficult to track because it was part of a line of storms and the rotation was intermittent. The warning was issued when the rotation became persistent. By then, the tornado was already on the ground. The study also examined the impact of the warning on human behavior. It surveyed 200 residents of Taylorville 6 months after the tornado. The results showed that 60% of residents heard the warning before the tornado arrived. Of those, 70% took shelter, but only 15% of mobile home residents took shelter because most did not have a safe place to go. The mobile home residents who did take shelter went to a neighbor's basement or to a community building. In the Forest Hills Mobile Home Park, where 3 people were injured and 1 died, no one had a safe room. The survey also asked why some residents did not hear the warning. The most common answer was that they were not home. The second most common answer was that they were asleep. The tornado struck at 4:44 p.m., but on a Saturday afternoon, many residents were away from their phones and televisions. The question of how to reach people who are not at home has no easy answer. The siren system is the only method that covers public spaces, but the sirens in Taylorville were not activated until 4:43, 1 minute before the tornado hit. The dispatcher who activated them later said that he was waiting for the warning to be confirmed by spotter reports. He did not want to cause a false alarm. The problem was that by the time the spotter confirmed the tornado, it was too late. The decision to wait cost the city 1 minute of warning. In that minute, the tornado moved 1 mile closer. The county emergency manager testified before a state legislative committee in Springfield in February 2019. He described the decision-making process on the day of the tornado. He said that the dispatcher was following standard protocol, which required confirmation from a trained spotter before activating sirens. The protocol had been written before the widespread use of radar. He admitted that the protocol needed to be updated. The committee recommended that Illinois update its siren activation guidelines to allow radar confirmation. But the state legislature did not pass a law. The committee's recommendations were advisory. Each county was left to decide for itself. By 2020, Christian County had revised its protocol. Now any tornado warning from the National Weather Service triggers an automatic siren activation. No human confirmation is required. The change cost nothing. It was a policy adjustment. But it was not implemented until after the tornado. The lesson was learned the hard way. The broader question is why the system does not also include automatic notification of mobile home parks. In 2019, the Federal Communications Commission considered a rule that would require wireless carriers to send geo-targeted alerts to all phones in a tornado warning polygon. The rule was proposed after a series of tornadoes in the south in Tuesday. The wireless industry opposed the rule, arguing that it would cause confusion and overload the network. The FCC did not adopt the rule. Instead, it encouraged carriers to voluntarily participate in the wireless emergency alert system. The system is opt-out, meaning that phones receive alerts automatically unless the user disables them. But the alerts are limited to 90 characters. They do not include specific instructions on where to go, and they are not always delivered in time. A 2021 study from the University of Oklahoma found that the average delay between a tornado warning issuance and the delivery of a wireless alert is 3 minutes. That is because the alerts must pass through multiple layers of government and cellular infrastructure. In Taylorville, if the wireless alert had been delivered 3 minutes earlier, it would have arrived at 4:36 before the tornado touched down. But it was not. The wireless alert for the Taylorville tornado was sent at 4:41, 2 minutes after the warning. It arrived on phones at 4:44 at the same time the tornado struck. For the people in the Forest Hills Mobile Home Park, the alert arrived too late to help. The story of the Taylorville tornado is a story of increments, 6 minutes instead of 13, 1 minute lost to protocol, 3 minutes lost to infrastructure. Each increment represents a gap that could be closed. Each gap represents a life that could be saved. But closing these gaps requires funding, legislation, and public will. In the years after the tornado, the Federal Emergency Management Agency increased its investment in tornado research. In 2020, it funded a study to evaluate the effectiveness of safe rooms in mobile home parks. The study was conducted by the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It examined 7 mobile home parks that had community-safe rooms. The study found that in every park, the safe room was used during tornado warnings. But it also found that the safe rooms were often located at the entrance of the park, which meant that residents at the far end had to run several hundred yards to reach them. In 2 of the 6 parks, residents reported that they did not use the safe room because they did not think they could get there in time. The study recommended that safe rooms be distributed throughout the park, with a maximum distance of 100 yards from any home. It also recommended that safe rooms be designed to accommodate the number of residents who might use them. The cost of building a community safe room for a 50-home mobile home park is approximately $200,000. That is $4,000 per home. For the residents of Forest Hills, a community safe room would have cost the same as a basement for a single site-built home. But the mobile home park owner did not build one. The owner was not required to. And the residents could not afford to build one themselves. The economic reality of mobile home parks is that they are often owned by companies that operate at low margins. The parks are located on leased land. The homes themselves are owned by the residents, but the land is owned by the company. The company has no incentive to build a safe room because it does not own the homes. The residents have no incentive to build a safe room because they do not own the land. The result is a collective action problem that leaves the most vulnerable people with no protection. The Taylorville tornado exposed this problem in stark terms. The mobile home park where the fatality occurred was owned by a national chain. The chain had not been cited for any safety violations because there were no standards to violate. After the tornado, the chain sold the park to a local investor. The new owner said he planned to rebuild the park with a community safe room, but by 2023 the safe room had not been built. The new owner said he was waiting for a grant from the state. The state had a grant program for safe rooms, but the application process required a match from the local government. The city of Taylorville declined to provide the match, citing budget constraints. The cycle continues. At the national level, the question of tornado safety is often framed as a personal responsibility. The message from the National Weather Service is, have a plan, know where to go, and practice regularly. But this message assumes that there is a safe place to go. For millions of Americans living in mobile homes, there is no safe place. The only way to make a mobile home safe in a tornado is to anchor it to a foundation with reinforced walls, which is essentially building a site-built home. That defeats the purpose of a mobile home, which is affordability. The affordability trap is the final layer of the story. Robert Lee and Doris Hargrove died because they could not afford to live anywhere else. They died because the place where they could afford to live was also the place where the tornado would find them. The society that built the warning system did not build a place for them to go. On December 1, 2023, the 5th anniversary of the tornado, a ceremony was held at the memorial stone. Susan, the leader of the nonprofit, spoke. She said that she had not given up on the shelter ordinance. She said that she would run for city council the next year. She said that if she won, she would keep pushing. The crowd applauded. A few people stayed behind to talk about the weather. The sky was clear. The temperature was 40 degrees, no storms were forecast, but the residents knew that the next storm could come at any time, and they knew that the system that was supposed to protect them was still incomplete. In the control room of the National Weather Service in Lincoln, Illinois, a meteorologist sat at a computer terminal. It was the same meteorologist who had issued the warning for Taylorville 5 years earlier. He had been reassigned to a different shift, but on that December afternoon he was working overtime. He watched the radar. No storms were showing, but he kept watching, because that is what the system does. It watches, it waits, it warns, and sometimes it is not enough. At 5:17 p.m. on December 1st, 2023, the National Weather Service in Lincoln issued a routine radar update for central Illinois. No warnings were in effect. The meteorologist who had worked the Taylorville tornado 5 years earlier was on shift. He reviewed the archived data from that night, something he did occasionally to see if any new analysis could explain the gap. The gap was still there. The divergence between the radar indicated rotation and the time it took for the warning to reach the people who needed it most. He closed the file and returned to the live radar. Nothing was brewing, but the memory of that evening was never far. What happened in Taylorville became a case study in the limitations of a system built on probability rather than guarantee. The National Weather Service issues warnings based on the likelihood of a tornado occurring within a given polygon. The polygon is drawn to cover the area where the threat is highest, but the polygon is not a guarantee that every home inside it will be hit. The margin of error is measured in miles. The warning for Taylorville covered a wide area, but the tornado struck a narrow corridor. In that corridor, the warning arrived 6 minutes early. For most of the town, that was enough. For the mobile home park, it was not. The question that remains unanswered is whether a 6-minute warning can ever be enough for people who have no shelter to go to. In 2022, a study published in the journal Natural Hazards Review examined the relationship between warning lead time and survival rates in mobile home parks. The study found that a lead time of less than 10 minutes is associated with a higher fatality rate, regardless of the quality of the warning. The reason is simple. The time needed to evacuate a mobile home park is longer than the time needed to evacuate a site-built home. Residents must move their vehicles, assist elderly or disabled neighbors, and reach a safe location that is often far from their homes. The study recommended that community-safe rooms be placed with a maximum distance of 100 yards from each home. It also recommended that mobile home parks be required to have an emergency plan that includes a designated shelter. But these recommendations remain recommendations. No federal law requires mobile home parks to have a shelter. No state law in Illinois requires it. The only enforcement mechanism is the local building code. And in Taylorville, the building code did not require a shelter. The mobile home park owner was not obligated to provide one. The city council had considered a shelter ordinance in 2019, but it was voted down after opposition from the Park Owners Association. The argument was that requiring shelters would increase the cost of living in mobile homes, which would price out the very people who needed affordable housing. It was a circular logic. The people who could not afford to live in a safer place could not afford to make their current place safer either. In the years following the tornado, the Forest Hills Mobile Home Park changed hands twice. The new owner, a man who lived in a nearby town, said he wanted to build a community safe room. He applied for a grant from the Federal Emergency Management Agency. The grant was approved in 2022 for $150,000, but the grant required a local match of $50,000. The city of Taylorville refused to provide the match. The mayor said the city had other priorities: road repairs, a new fire truck, and a sewer upgrade. The safe room project stalled. As of 2023, no construction had begun. The story of the Taylorville tornado is not unique. In 2019, a tornado struck a mobile home park in Ohio. The park had no safe room. 3 people died. In 2021, a tornado struck a mobile home park in Arkansas. The park had a safe room, but it was locked. The manager had the key, but the manager was not on site. No one died in that park because the tornado missed the homes by a quarter mile. But the near miss exposed the same problem. A safe room is only useful if it is accessible, maintained, and unlocked. In 2022, the National Fire Protection Association released a standard for tornado shelters in manufactured home communities. The standard was voluntary. No state adopted it. The human cost of these gaps is measured not only in lives lost but in the ongoing anxiety of the survivors. Residents of Taylorville who lived through the tornado report symptoms of post-traumatic stress years later. They hyperventilate at the sound of thunder. They check radar obsessively. They sleep with shoes and a flashlight by the bed. Some have moved out of mobile homes entirely. Others stay because they have no choice. The economy of central Illinois does not offer many paths out of poverty. The affordable housing stock is limited. Mobile homes remain the only option for many families. At the national level, the issue has faded from public attention. The tornado was not a record-breaking disaster. The death toll was 1. The property damage was moderate. The story did not generate a national news cycle beyond a few days. But for the people of Taylorville, the story is not over. Every time a tornado warning is issued for Christian County, the same questions arise. How much time do we have? Where can we go? Will the sirens work this time? The meteorologist in Lincoln checked the time. It was 5:24 p.m. He logged off his workstation and walked to his car. The sky was clear. The temperature was dropping. He drove home past the Forest Hills Mobile Home Park. The sign had been replaced after the tornado. The park was full of new homes, all tied down, all without basements.